Hello?
That's better.
Just checking. All right. So let me start by saying how wonderful to see so many students today and guests from outside. And we have been looking forward to this day for a long time. Actually, it started about 6 months ago when I contacted Mr. Lewis for the first time via LinkedIn, a beautiful tool. So we didn't know I would be standing here today. And this is a great honor because Mr. Lewis, or should I say Sir Richard D. Lewis, actually has traveled around the world several times in his yacht, and he has taught language in many different cultures and countries, over 130 different destinations. He has been the founder of the Berlitz Language School, and now we are proud to introduce him today because we have our own culture class at the 8th semester, and we use Lewis's book, When Cultures Collide, a book which has sold in more than 1 million copies. So I proudly present Mr. Richard D. Lewis.
That's how we boxers in England, you know. Richard D. But I'm not a boxer. Okay, hands up if you don't speak English. Good. Hands up if you are Danish. So you have a majority. You could vote. What would you call that? Brexit in Danish? Dexit? You could vote majority, get out of the European Union. I'm sorry about Brexit. I'm sure you are too. I'm sure it's one of the mistakes that we made in the last few months. Anyway, what I'm talking about today is not so much leaving other nationalities, but rather the opposite. What do we do when we work with many nationalities? Now, I believe that you are, well, maybe Danish. Hands up if you are not Danish. How many do we have not Danish? I can ask you what you are later. Have we any French here? So we have to be careful what we say about the French if they hear. But they're my friends, of course. We can all be friends. One of the things I try to tell people is, although I know quite a few cultures, and you do, there are no good cultures and there are no bad cultures. No, there are only different cultures. And people behave in very different ways. And when you don't understand why they behave in a certain way, you may not think they're bad, but you think they're strange. And, well, they're not quite Danish, you know. So, and in England we think, well, that's not quite English. Or we sometimes say it's not quite cricket, which is more or less the same thing. When you go out in the world, as many of you will, and meet people from other nationalities, this title is When Cultures Collide. I mean, cultures don't always collide. Cultures can also connect. And that is why what you try to do if you have foreign colleagues, and especially if you're on a boat with them, it's not very good when cultures collide on a boat, and I've had that experience myself. But when you are meeting people from other cultures and there are no problems, when you agree about things, then you forget that the cultural differences can be significant. But if you disagree about things, then the cultural differences start showing. Because most people, if they agree about something, what do they say? They say, yes, I agree, or yes, I have the same opinion, and there is no friction and there are no problems. But when people don't agree, some people actually are honest, and they say, I don't agree. Now, what are the honest nationalities, do you know? When I say honest nationalities, I mean the people who say what they think. Do Danes always say what they think? No, of course not. Why not? Why not, James?
Because they come from a very old culture where they have survived by negotiating with all the superpowers around them.
Very good. Did you hear that? Danes have survived by negotiating with the superpowers. The superpowers was like Norway and Sweden and Finland, you mean? Yeah. Well, they all think they're superpowers. Ask any Norwegian, they'll tell you the most important people, you know. I asked one Norwegian once, what are the different cultures in the world, you see? And this Norwegian, he thought for a while, and he said there are only two cultures. There are only two classes of people. Norwegians and those who wish they were Norwegians, you see. That was his division of the world, right? Okay, well, I asked you, who are the honest nationalities? And when I say honest, I mean, who say what they think? Can you give me a nationality who always say what they really think? Guess, come on, anyone. Shout it out.
Netherlands.
Hamlet?
Netherlands.
Netherlands, yeah, you're right. And of course, along with them, we have to admit that the Germans say what they think. So if a German doesn't agree, you know what he says? He says, I don't agree. You know, in a quite emphatic way. Ich bin damit überhaupt nicht einverstanden, or something, you know, like that. I don't agree. Now, but ask an Englishman if he agrees. And if he doesn't agree, I don't say I don't agree because I'm English. So what do I say? And why don't I say the truth? I don't agree, but why don't I say the truth?
Polite?
Because, well, polite, yes, that's part of it. We say in English we don't want to rock the boat, you know. If you rock the boat, people can fall out and so on. So we say something more diplomatic. And I'm sure Danes would too. I'm not sure what Danes would say if they don't agree. But anyway, what do we say in English, you know? Well, for instance, we could say, interesting idea. Now, if you hear an Englishman say that, don't think that he thinks it's interesting. Well, he thinks, what he's really saying, forget it. That's what he's saying, forget it, you know. And so you find that when you go to the British different nationalities, you find that people say different things. So, for instance, what does an American say if he doesn't agree? Anybody got an answer?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah, well, it's true. They are very direct, but they're not quite so direct as the Germans. And Americans try to make everything a bit humorous, you know, that's the way they live. Think life has to be fun in America. They're entertainment people. So he probably says something like that. You gotta be kidding. And what he's saying is, I don't agree. He's saying, I don't agree. What would a Swede say? Well, you know the Swedes, they're your neighbours. Have you ever been to Sweden? Hans, have you been to Sweden? Since you made the bridge ride. Well, everybody in Sweden, if they don't agree, do they say, I don't agree? What do you think? No. Do they like confrontation? I don't agree. And the Swedes talk like that? I would say almost never. So usually I find, I work with Swedes quite a lot, and usually I find they say, let's arrange a meeting. We must have saken, you know. Let's arrange a meeting. And believe me, in Sweden meetings can last quite a long time. Yeah. So be careful. What do Italians say? Are they direct? Do they say, I don't agree? Non sono d'accordo. Do they say that in Italian?
No.
No. But what do they? You speak Italian. What do they say?
Incredibile.
Incredibile. Yeah. Or they say something like, let's go to Campari and talk about it tomorrow. Yeah. In other words, they're trying to be pleasant. So, you know, when you're with someone of a different culture and you don't agree with them, you can either say, I don't agree, or you can try to be pleasant. So, and Italians are in that category. Talk about tomorrow. Yeah, you know. What do Finns say? And are there any Finns here? Well, we say what we like about the Finns, then. No Finns? What do Finns say, you know? Very talkative people. They say, that's what they say, yeah. Have you ever been to Finland? I'll tell you more about them later. I lived there for 5 years. What do the Chinese say? This is quite interesting. Well, Chinese, again, you know, are not very direct people. So they say this. You see? I agree with you, but I have a different opinion. You can please yourself what you make of that, you know. So you see, the Chinese don't believe in absolute truth. Nothing is absolutely true. Never, never, never. Nothing is absolutely true. There's a story of the Chinese philosopher and his student, and he said to this boy, nothing is always true. And the boy looked at a cow in the middle of a field, and he said, that cow is brown. And the philosopher said, it's brown on this side, you know. But what about the other side? We can't see it. So this is what the Chinese mean. They say there is no absolute truth. And what do the Japanese say? Anybody know? Well, you know that the Japanese never say no. So when the Japanese want to say I don't agree, they say, agree. Yeah. And I lived in Japan 5 years, and I never heard a Japanese say I don't agree. They simply say, I agree, which is not the same as I agree. I agree, which means I don't agree. See? Okay, so that just shows you when you agree, there are no miscommunication among people, but when you are disagreeing, people express themselves in different ways, and I'm sure you will. I mean, what would they say they don't agree? You know, I mean, can you give me a nice Danish sentence for I don't agree? Because you say you're not direct, you negotiate.
Jamen det.
Jamen det. What does that mean? It sounds like it's Monday today.
It can mean anything.
I can mean anything, yeah. Well, I think I've noticed that in Denmark, yeah. You're very good at meaning something, yeah. Well, a little bit like the English in that regard. Okay, well, let's get back to basics. What is culture and where does it come from? You know, where does culture come from? Does it come from the sky, or where does it come from? Well, who are your first cultural teachers?
First cultural teachers?
Yeah, who were your first cultural teachers?
Probably my mom and dad.
Yeah, your mum and dad, yeah. But did they teach you to be a good boy?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and are you Danish? So you're a good Danish, a good little Danish boy, yeah. But you see, the Italians, they also teach their children to be good little Italian boys. But a good little Italian boy makes a very bad Danish boy, and a good little Danish boy makes a very bad Italian. But I can't explain that too much. But, okay, culture comes, you know, culture is a kind, you can't draw culture. I like to draw things, but you can't draw it. But here you have a kind of cloud, or let's call it an atmosphere. And into this atmosphere come first the unborn children and the newborn children, maybe immigrants, that's not so important. But the children are born into that. And if they are in that cloud or atmosphere for 12 years, if you're a German and you come into that cloud for 12 years with German parents, at the age of 12 you go out of it in the sense that you are now German, and you're German for the rest of your life. Because psychologists tell us that the 12-year period is very important, you know, the age of puberty, and then you're German. And you can immigrate to the United States, but you will always be a German. Whereas if you immigrate to the United States with your parents at the age of 3 or 4, after 6 months you're completely American. Because you go into American kindergarten and you hear all the children speaking and you become one of them. So it's a very powerful thing and you don't change. So once Danish, you know, always Danish. Once Chinese, always Chinese. Up to a point. And there we are. Key factors, you know, geography. If you are born, you know, in northern Greenland, you won't behave the same way as someone who was born in the Kalahari Desert. And if you're born in Denmark, well, even Denmark is different from Sweden and Norway. The geography is very important, especially if you are born in extreme climates, very hot and very cold. And of course, agriculture has a big influence if you're nomadic or not. History is very important, what happened in your wars. It can form your culture. Education is also another factor. Religion is another factor. And of course, language. So that if you speak Danish, it actually does something to your character. It did something to mine when I tried to learn Danish. I couldn't say "Sue of Hazel" for my life, you know. It took me a long time to learn how to say that. But Danish is a rather easy language for English people, except we can't pronounce it. But if you learn a language like Japanese, it has a cultural effect on you, because Japanese is a polite language. And it's such a polite language that there are no real swear words in Japanese. So you can't be rude in Japan, in Japanese. The language forces you to be polite. And whereas German forces you to be direct. And Swedish forces you to be non-confrontational. So each language has a character. And if you know the language well enough, you know, Italian forces you to be, well, romantic or something, you know. And the French is a very special language, forces you to be very logical. So language has a big influence on your culture, which language you were born into. And you will find that if you learn foreign languages and you learn to speak them well, that you become bilingual, you also become rather bicultural. So if you spend 10 years learning French, not only do you understand the French much better, but you kind of become a bit French. And I've met many Danish people who spent a long time in England and they become almost English. And they're what to do in this room. Okay, here is a cultural misunderstanding. Well, obviously, there are some important ones. For instance, values, you know, what is a typical German value? What is a typical English value? Again, you can tell me, but we are so many people, I can't make it so interactive. But I know, typical German value is what? People always say the same thing.
Yeah, Ordnung muss sein.
Ordnung, yeah, very good. And punctuality, right? Yeah. And what's an Italian value, a typical Italian value? Where are you?
Bella figura.
Bella figura, okay. And what about la familia, you know? And what's a typical English value?
My home is my castle.
My home is my castle, yes. Or fair play, you know, or cricket. That's not cricket, that means that's not fair, you know, yeah. Okay, and so obviously when people have different values, when a Mexican working for a German company, Germans arrive at work at 5 minutes to 9 and he arrives at work at 10 o'clock and it creates problems. So values create problems. Truth is a value. And you know, again, truth is not always truth. It's always truth, but it's a different kind of truth. So German truth is not Italian truth. And there's nothing wrong with Italian truth. It's very convenient sometimes. But it's different from German truth. Tell me about Danish truth. Well, don't tell me now. Tell me later about Danish truth. And so values are truth and honesty and so on. And they are important. Now, there's also communication pattern. And that is also very important in culture. See, the way you communicate, it tells people a lot about you. And you can communicate, speech itself is very subject to many things. For instance, you can speak quickly, or you can speak slowly, you know, or you can speak in a very deep manner, or you can speak in a very shallow manner. And people judge you by the way you speak, and you can speak with your body language or not. So, you know, an Englishman, if he doesn't know something, what does he say? He says, I don't know. What does a Frenchman say?
Je ne sais pas.
Je ne sais pas, but he doesn't actually say it that way. He says, je ne sais pas. Right? And you don't even need to speak. So that in French means, I don't know. But if you do that in English without words, it doesn't mean very much. Yeah. All right. So, communication. Now we'll be talking quite a bit about communication today. And so that includes also listening habits, which are very different. You all listen in different ways, if you are different nationalities. And then concepts of time and space, and hierarchy and leadership. Obviously people have different views about these things. You know, in Denmark you have very definite views about hierarchy, which are not the same as German, and not the same as Japanese. And then again, you may be Danish, but you may be other things. You can be from Jutland, or you can be from Copenhagen. And people tell me they're different, you know. You can, because they are regional cultures. And then you can be, I don't know what you can be, it's not working. You can be an engineer. Hands up if you are an engineer or related, or you're technical. See, most people in this room, But your culture is likely to be different. If you're a Danish engineer, your culture won't be quite the same as a Danish salesman or saleswoman. And a Danish woman will not be the same as a Danish man. So profession and education is important. And then, of course, men are different from women. You can be, well, in Denmark you don't have any classes, so you're all middle class, which is fine. In England we have classes. Religious, obviously, makes a difference. Sometimes leads to enormous problems, but not always. You know, today the world has problems with the question of Islam and Christianity, but it has not always been like that. There were many times in history when the different religions functioned perfectly together. And in some countries it's actually happened, where even in Denmark and in England and America there is a lot of religious agreement. But it is a cultural thing. And then you have generational, my son is not like me, my son is not like me. And then ethnic, I might be partly Jewish, I'm partly Welsh. I'm English, but I'm 1/4 Welsh. So ethnically I'm a bit different. And then corporate, if you work for IBM, you will not have the same character or communication style as someone who works for Apple or someone who works for Maersk, because these are strong cultures, corporate cultures. And finally, the most important one, your own personal culture, which is, you might be, I mean, all Germans are punctual, but they're not all the same. There are noisy Germans and quiet Germans, you know. There are talkative Italians and quiet Italians. Well, I met one once, but 1948 I met a quiet Italian. But there are lovely people in Italy, to be honest with you. Okay, what's next? Generalization and stereotypes. Okay, now you may think that I'm speaking in stereotypes because, in fact, you can't talk about culture if you don't generalize a little, because cultures obviously are different. So let me say certain things and say it's okay. Can I say, for instance, Italians talk a lot? Is that okay to say that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's okay, because they do talk a lot. Can I say Italians talk more than Danes? Is that okay? Yeah, because Italians do talk more than Danes. Can I say Italians talk too much?
No.
No, why not? They do talk too much. Why can't I say Italians talk too much? Are there any Italians here, by the way? Okay. They left off that here. Yeah, all the French left as well, did you notice? Yeah. Why can't I say Italians talk too much?
Offensive.
Well, it's not offensive, it's actually rather true. But it's judgmental. So who am I judging Italian? Italian can say to me, why do you say I talk too much? I talk enough. You English, you don't talk enough. See? So it's judgmental. So I can say they talk more than them, that's all right. So with stereotypes we have to be evaluative rather than judgmental. And we have to use them consciously and, descriptive, not evaluative, and modify from time to time and use the first best guess. So, stereotyping is all right. If you're telling someone that we're going to another country how to behave, you have only 2 minutes to tell them. People come to me and say, I'm going to go to Japan. How shall I behave? Well, I need 1 day to tell them that. But I can tell them in 2 sentences, be more polite than you've ever been before in your life. And don't let anyone lose face. And that will make their way in Japan a lot easier than if they go under other rude and cause people to lose face. You can't say to a Japanese, I don't like your tie, You can't say that. It sounds harmless, but it's an insult. So, you can give first best guess. What would be the first best guess someone coming to Denmark? What would you advise them, James?
Be very direct.
Be very direct, okay. And you would say that to someone going to Germany and turn upon time. But you wouldn't say that to someone going to China or Korea or Japan or Asia. Don't be direct, you get in trouble. Yeah. I had a class once here, and I asked, there's a man in the club from Venezuela, and I said, what would you say, advise to anyone going to Venezuela? I said, tell him to take his gun with him. Which was not very cultural, but anyway, that's what he said. He said it, not me. Okay, what's next? Now we come to a rather critical moment in the way we judge cultures. And you know, we have a model which we actually call the Lewis model, but anyway. And you would find it described in this book here, that we say that there are 3 types of human beings. Now the Norwegians said they're Norwegians, although they wish they were Norwegians, but that wasn't too serious, although he meant it, of course. But we say that there are 3 types of human beings, and they can be classified in 3 categories: linear active, multi-active, and reactive. Now, in order to explain those terms, I have to show you a little bit. And the linear active one is easy to figure out for you, being Danes and knowing the Germans well. You can see there, typical German, doing one thing at a time, logical, direct, job-oriented, using mainly facts, truth before diplomacy, and so on, respecting official law. A dutiful citizen, you know. But there's some people who are not like that. So let's take the Italians. They're not linear active. Italians are what we call multi-active. So that 2 people can talk at the same time. And they're not so product-oriented, they're mainly, you know, people-oriented. And they have flexible truth. And they are emotional people. And they do several things at once, and many people talk at once. So these are multi-active people. Emotional, family is important, religion may be important, they talk fast, they're emotional. And then we have another category of person who listens very well and who reacts to people, that's why we call them reactive, indirect, concealing feelings, never confronts, must not lose face, don't interrupt, and very people-oriented. Which people are these? They are the Asians, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Koreans. They're all different, but they have a lot in common. So that description there would describe anyone, you know, east from Istanbul. Reactive people, they react to other people's statements or actions. And that decides how they behave. They react, they don't take the lead. And the Asians are very good at playing, you know, second fiddle and modifying their actions according to the other side. And it pays, of course. Okay, now, who is who? Which were the Danes in all this? Were the Germans? Were the Africans? So we have tested. We have a testing system called Culture Active. And we test system with a test of about 100 questions, or rather more. And we ask them to answer these questions, and then we get from them a profile which shows how linear active, multi-active, or reactive they are. And that is a result of the testing. It's a kind of football league table, but instead of vertical, it's triangular. And you see that in this bottom left-hand corner, you have the Germans and the Americans and the British, very linear active. On the bottom right-hand corner, you have the Asians, Japan, China, Korea, Vietnam, to some extent, you know, Hong Kong. And at the top you have all the Latins, you have the Arabs, you have the Africans, all very emotional, indirect, of course, trying to be polite, a lot of them, some more than others, but they're emotional people, not linear at all, not very direct. Now, where's Denmark, and where is Norway, and where is Sweden, and where is Finland, because that's of interest to you. And you can see that the Danes are on this axis going up, four up, along with Australia and Ireland. Why are they there? Because the Norwegians are lower down, more linear. And then here at the bottom you have Sweden and Finland between linear active and reactive. Why are they there? Well, of course you probably begin to realize the differences. For instance, if we look at Denmark and Norway is very close to USA and Germany. They are very direct, they don't talk too much. Danes, as you said, are not so direct. They're prepared to negotiate, but they talk a lot more than the other Scandinavians. And so we sometimes call the Danes the Latins of Scandinavia, yeah? Which is a pretty good description. I don't know if you agree with it or not. And then the Finns, and the poor Finns and Swedes, they don't talk so much, so we put them on the other axis going towards Japan. And in fact, Japanese people and Finnish people tend to communicate in a similar manner. They both use silence a lot. And as you go along there, you have Canada, which they're much more laid back than the Americans. And then you have Singapore and Hong Kong, who are between Japan and the West. And that's because in those countries they were colonies, British colonies, and also their people study very often in Europe, so they become somewhat westernized. And then up there you have, of course, the Asians, and you see the Koreans are more lively than the Chinese and so on. Indonesia, they talk more, and gradually they become more emotional as you go up there, so they're partly multi-active. And there you have the Bulgarians and the Turks and Saudi Arabians and the Africans. So there could be some surprises for you in that table, but that is how people are tested. So there we are. And then in comments afterwards you can ask me if you disagree with something there. And what do we do when we've tested people? And you see here a profiling test called Culture Active. Each person has a culture-related position. So you are 20 Danes. You come to me and you say, test us. And we test you all, and you have a position. According to your rating, you have a position in the triangle. And so what does that tell a company? Or what does that tell a university, for that matter? It enables you to do something with those dots. Because you have some people who you see working with a company are very linear, and they're very suited to send to Germany, or to have jobs like engineers or accountants. You have other people higher up who could work in Brazil without any problem, or Latin countries, or who might want to be teachers, or people, you know, salespeople, so on. And then, of course, on the right-hand side, you have people who could work well in Asia. And there are not many in this particular. This is an actual group from the World Bank where we tested their HR people, and we found that they were rather weak in terms of people who could be sent to Asia, because the World Bank sends people around, you know, to lend money and things like that. So this was an actual grouping, and that's somewhere if you were tested, you would appear in that group. They would tell you something about yourself, but even more importantly, your relation to the other people in your group. So the people who are very close together can assume that they would work easily together because they have a similar cultural profile. And you can ask me questions at any time, but I will allow questions, you know, at the end of this talk, and even in the break we might ask a few questions. Okay, so then what do we come to? Human mental programming. Now, all of you have been brainwashed, including me. And you are brainwashed, as we said earlier, by your parents. They tell you, that's very good, that's bad, you're a naughty boy, be careful, go to bed early, you know. They tell you all the way to live, they tell the way that the good little Danish boy should live. And the Italian's being told something different by his parents. And the girls too, they're told to behave differently from boy to lady. So this gives you a kind of program in your mind which is told to be good for you. But you know, are there any values which are universal? That's a good question. You know, are there any values we can say, well, you know, Germans are punctual, Dutch people are punctual, but Mexicans, punctuality was not invented in Mexico, right? So, are there any values which are universal? Well, we all say we agree. Can you think of any? Can you think of any, James?
Yes, there's a taboo against incest.
Oh yeah, well, incest, I'm not going into incest, it's too complicated. Yeah, I think you're quite right, but what does people all agree on? Never mind what we don't agree on. I've not had that thrown at me before. Yeah. You know, I think positively, where do we all agree? If we say we all agree to do things quickly, that's wrong, because people like to do things slowly, and Americans like to do things quickly. Anybody got any ideas? Okay, hands up if you love small children. Put your hands up if you love small children. You don't love small children? Oh, all right then, well, you're not very old yourself, are you? Okay, but you know, small children. The Russians like small children, Americans like small, even the Americans like their children. But I mean, the Chinese do, the Russians do. Do Danes like their children? James?
Yes.
They're right, okay. Now, here's another one. We all want to be liked.
Yeah.
I want to be liked. Now, put your hands up if you don't want to be liked. You're too far away, but you're friends, of course. Yeah. Well, the only person in 30 years I asked this question who said he didn't want to be liked was a Frenchman, and he put his hand up. You're near Aarhus in France. And I say, you don't want to be liked? No, why not? I don't want people to like me. I don't care if anyone likes me or not. I don't care, you know, I don't want to be liked. He was French. And I said, what's your job? He said, company controller. So that explained a little bit, you know. Nobody liked him anyway, so he didn't want to be liked. So, but, you know, there are some universal characteristics, so I'll show you what they are. If you look at this is the American brainwashing program, and that's in yellow. All Americans are told to be like that. But at the bottom in orange, you see a lot of the young want to be liked, angry at injustice, gratitude for favours, of course procreation, and survival. These things are common to all of us. And so it gives us a basis, you know. So if you with someone from another culture and you want to get on with them, you have to be on the same boat or in the same company. You probably know that probably the 5 things in the bottom section, you know, are respected by him. And if you do him a favour, he will do you a favour, and if you like him, he'll like you, and so forth. But there you have the typical American characteristics, which are only in America. So all Americans are told about the frontier spirit. You go to California, you know, you get the gold. You go quickly. You have to work hard. You have to be democratic. You have to be competitive. You know, risk-taking, urgency. All these things are American characteristics. And not only did the original Americans do that when they went to California in their wagons, you know, fighting the Indians and so on. But even today in American business, people take risks, people are optimistic, people are very competitive. The same characteristics live on in the business world that lived in the world of the pioneers. So that's that, and of course other people are different. So if you look at the British, they have the same basis at the bottom, but the British are insular, they have more traditions than the Americans. We are a little uneasy with foreigners, we are compromisers, we law-abiding. We conceal some feelings, we love debate. We use call it speech, which means we say it's interesting when we mean it's not interesting. And we are, of course, rather diplomatic and class conscious, unfortunately. So these are different characteristics. We're not Americans. And of course, we're rather linear active. The Germans are very linear active. Again, they are more serious people than British or Americans. Germans are people who ask serious questions. What do they expect?
Serious answer.
They expect a serious answer. And from British and Canadians, they don't get, or Americans, they don't get serious answers. So Germans think that we're rather, we say the word flippant in English, you know, not too serious. But we are serious, but we're not as serious as the Germans. The Germans are very honest people, very private. They love ordnung, as James said. They have a tendency to complicate things. I have to tell you about that. But that's not a bad thing. You know, they say that life is not simple. Why pretend life is simple? You know, that's why we complicate things. And so, direct, honest, truthful, time-dominated, very formal, much more formal than Danes. And then you have the Finns, who are very quiet people, modest, also honest, conceal their feelings, like to be alone, work hard, uneasy with foreigners, bit inferiority complex occasionally, and so on, a sense of separateness, their separate culture, not like the other Nordic people. And who else do we have? The Danes, here we are. Now, do you agree with this? This is what this is how people see you. Danes are factual, they're tolerant, think of Danes in a meeting, accommodating, you know, they give way, sense of humour. They're a bit like the British, they like to understand British jokes, you know, make their own jokes. They sell themselves very well. It's a small country, but you have a terrific economic record. A Dane knows how to sell himself. A Dane knows how to sell himself or sell herself. They are good listeners, they are flexible, they avoid confrontation, but not as much as the Swedes. Everything is hygge in Denmark, whatever that means. They're hyggelig, and that's okay, you know, why not? Why not be hyggelig? They're good talkers. They're ultimately tough, which a lot of people don't know. They think that you're just nice with all this hygge. They don't know how tough Danes are underneath, and that's why they are so successful economically. They can negotiate, as James said. But they are a caring society, low-profile leaders, creative people in architecture, glass, furniture, very creative people, very tasteful, which is almost the same thing, and they consult in companies, and they like the small but good concept. Andrew, do you agree with that? Do you think it's a good description of Denmark? Good. So you're happy with it? So I don't have to leave the room or anything. Okay, right. Well, of course, I admire the Danes. That's obvious in my book. I say good things about them. But what a lot of people don't realize is that although the Danes seem to be the most pleasant people on earth, underneath they are tough. I don't say they're not pleasant, but they're tough. Okay. Swedes, again, very different. Many things the same, like the welfare society and importance of nature and law-abiding. These are the same as in Denmark. But they have lange, which is much more relaxed attitude to life. And of course they are very collective, and they like to agree. They like everybody to agree. We once were defining agreement, and we asked a group of people, and you know, the Germans said, I agree if it's legal, and they have different concepts, and the Swedes said, I agree if all of us agree. That was his concept of if we agreed or not. So they like their consensus. And of course they don't like to go forward without consensus. And in business this can be a problem. What time is it? 2 o'clock. Okay. A life within horizons. Now what do I mean by that? Well, if you're born in Denmark, you're a little baby, and you open your eyes, and what do you see? You see Denmark. If you're born in Aarhus, you don't see Copenhagen, it's too far away. But you see Jutland, and you see some nice fields, and in winter, if you're lucky, you might see a little bit of snow. But basically you see green fields, storks with theirs living in their nests on houses. You see postmen with red costumes, and everything is hugely. And so that is the Danish culture. You see a Danish world. And it's rather a nice world. But if you live in another country like Italy, that's also rather a nice world, but you see a different world. You see people with darker hair and different concepts. And so how do these things match up? And do they overlap? And well, the answer is you have to, you see the diagram where you can see so much, you don't see things at the side and on the other side of the moon. There's a cultural black hole, which is something you will never believe. A cultural black hole, and nearly all cultures have one, is that you don't believe something, and that's that. So a cultural black hole is when you get two nationalities who hate each other. The Greeks and the Turks hate each other. They hated each other 1,000 years ago, and they still hate each other. And they're not bad people, you know, but they hate each other. And I always tell Turks that Greeks are nice people, and I keep telling Greeks that Turks are nice people, but they don't believe you because they have this cultural black hole. So apart from your cultural black hole, you see, you know what you see. You see Denmark. Now, if you then look at this diagram, it's rather different. You have French world on this side, the USA world on that side, and you see that they're looking in different directions. But there is an overlap, and that overlap will be concepts which are common to both. That is important if you're working with another culture. So then you fill this in, look at the differences. You know, in America you have informal manners with first names, and in France you have formal manners with surnames. You can't call French people by the first name at the first meetings, you know. And Americans are interested in facts and figures, and French people are interested in ideas. They don't care very much about facts, but good ideas are something else. Americans get to the point quickly, French people talk in a roundabout manner. Yeah. And then you go down, you know, Americans are direct, French are indirect, diplomatic. Product-oriented Americans, people-oriented, relationship-oriented French. Look at the difference between Washington and Lincoln on one side and Napoleon and Louis XIV on the other side. Now you have Trump over here, it's part of the American world. Pragmatic, streetwise, Americans, French people, savoir-faire. An American mission to save the world, right, for democracy. That's the mission, but Americans believe that. French people mission to civilize the world. Sometimes they say we have to save the world from the Americans. That's the French idea. They have a very strong sense of mission. But that's okay. That's the way they live. And fast food in America, McDonald's, and in France, haute cuisine, you know, good cooking. But even though these countries are very different, and they are very different, they have an overlap. So they all agree about justice system. They both had a revolution. They believe about liberty, equality. In French, you say liberté, égalité, fraternité, freedom of speech, consumerism, science, technology, our way is best. There they agree on these things. So what do you do if you're working with a colleague from another culture, or you're on the same ship, and you find you have differences? You should also look for things which you have in common. And then you can do business with them, or you can at least get on with them socially. And sometimes it's difficult. For instance, we made this point with Volvo a couple of years ago. We were teaching a group of Volvo people how to get on well with people from other nationalities. And at that time they were selling a lot of cars to Saudi Arabia. And what we told the Swedes were, the Volvo people, that when you have a cocktail party, you know, with the Arabs, if you talk about business, you sell 500 cars, you want to sell 5,000, you have to get closer to them. So getting closer to Arabs means you talk about things they're interested in, and they find out what you have in common. So when Finnish businessmen do business with Swedish businessmen, they have a lot in common, you know, snow, forest, Scandinavian concepts, religion, lakes. Finns and Swedes very even talk together easily, and they have dinner together and they drink together, and the next day they do better business together because they got closer to them personally. So we said to the Volvo people, go out of the room, come back in half an hour and tell us what you have in common with Arabs. Now you think about it, you're Danes. These were Swedes. They went out of the room for half an hour, came back, told us what they had in common with Arabs. You know what they said? Nothing. We have nothing in common. We can't talk about religion. We can't talk about women. No? Not allowed to talk about women. We can't talk about sport. We don't play the same sports. So there's very little you can talk about, you know, between certain nationalities because they have nothing in common. I mean, Danes would have plenty in common with Germans and Swedes because, you know, they're in your area. But what do you have in common with a Hottentot from the Kalahari Desert? What do you have in common with someone from Malaysia or Borneo, you see? It's not easy to get closer to people. But getting closer to people is good for business, as we all know that. You create empathy. Yeah. So this diagram is supposed to help you to create empathy by finding out what's in common. And you can do this with many nationalities. So then trying to with Swedes and Finns and Norwegians, it filled the middle part very easily. But not with, you know, Greeks and Italians and people from Uzbekistan. And there we are. This is men and women, you know. What do men and women have in common, and what's different? And you see, if you look at the differences, men are interested in facts, and women are interested in understanding and feelings, power and understanding, logic, but women believe in intuition, wealth, you know, non-material benefits, competition, cooperation, products, relationships, results, women think of solutions. Look at Angela Merkel, you know, we have a big problem, that's a refugee problem. But being a woman, she thought, well, there's a solution. And in her case, you know, she let them all come into Germany. And was not very good for her from the point of view of her party position and politics. And maybe she made a mistake, but it was a woman's way of looking for a solution rather than just talking about the problem. So you see that in business and in even social life, women can be very useful and sometimes can take the lead in the way of people, you know, but they all, in the middle, they all believe, you know, in bringing up children properly and ethics and so on. So this is, you know, the horizon diagram. So I think we stop there for 10 minutes. And you can, if anyone wants to ask a question, but we just stop for a 10-minute break, and then we carry on again until 4:15. So, anyone got a burning question? What time is it now? So we carry on till 3:15. That's right. Which country are we in? Denmark, yeah. I was somewhere else yesterday and I'm somewhere else tomorrow. So, okay. Any burning questions? Well, we're going to have time for questions between 3 o'clock and 3:15. Anybody got a question they can't live without? Good. That means you agree to everything. Okay. Take 10 minutes break. And if you go away, take 10 Danish minutes, not 10 Mexican minutes. Okay. Please come back. There, yeah.
Just take this for a second. Yeah. Men det gider ikke gå efter. Det er sjovt, det er altid de samme mennesker, der dukker ind til sådan en race. Det er ikke sådan en nå, det er teknisk projekt. Der må være nogle underviserkollegaer, der ikke kan der kunne dukke op. Altså jeg sendte du i går igen. Jeg tror også, Jacob har lagt det på campus i dag. Ja. Ja. Det er ikke hun selv,
Yeah, have you ever seen this video? Metro station in Japan and Mexico? No. It's like, you know, it's a Japanese metro station. You know, it's the same technology, same way. They're very disciplined also. Yeah. Putting a line up beside the train. I know exactly.
Like the metro.
Yeah.
I have taken those.
Exactly. And when we empty the bag, then we start to fill it up from the line. No, from the line. Also, you see, if here in this, when we fill up, we start a new line, but we know there's another train coming. Yeah. No need to panic, right? Yeah. So this is a very efficient way of their culture working for how to get a metro system efficient, right? So, but then we have the same situation in Mexico, right? Just mentioned. So this is not a situation. We have no system. Nobody gets out, nobody gets out.
Vi ikke. Enten det eller en kugle, tror jeg. Jeg ikke kan sige. Ja.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just a funny way of.
Klar liggende eller et eller andet. Og så har hun været nede for en autograf.
Det er sgu altid flot at få en vinduesplads. Ja, lige
Selv fra himlen. Ja, det er godt. Du kan huske til i morgen.
Det her, det giver jo klart.
I'll give you this again, so we don't forget.
Yeah. No.
So does this record the sound, yeah? Yeah. And they could, is it someone videoing this?
Yes.
So that you match the sound with the video afterwards? So, yeah, that's fine.
All our distant learners are watching afterwards. They're not streaming, but they will be able to see on the campus side.
Yeah.
We have quite a few distant learners here.
Yeah.
That's why we can fill the whole auditorium with just our students, because they're sitting at home, or perhaps I have one in Dubai, and I have one in Thailand, other places.
So they're distance learning watching this now?
Yes, and they would have been if we have streamed it, but we will record it and then show the recording afterwards.
Yeah, okay.
But they're quite good, our distant learners. Very serious students. In general, our students are very serious. They're working about 60 hours at least. I see them studying here from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 at night.
Yeah. Quite conscientious.
Yes, very. So,
well, I don't know where Jen went for the coffee, but there must be a queue. It doesn't matter. I'm sure I like a coffee.
just say when you want to start and turn on the mic.
Well, I have to wait for his coffee.
Yes.
You won't be on. Someone come in a coffee. Maybe she's
Martin is one of my other colleagues. Have you said hello to him?
which one?
In the green shirt?
No. I can't do that to it.
And Jens is the other one in the black shirt. They're brothers.
Ah, right. Yeah. Engineers are usually quieter audiences.
Yes, you know, reactive types.
Yeah. Here he is.
Yes. So I'll turn on the
Did you go to Sweden?
We went to Sweden. We went all around the building, but we succeeded.
Yeah.
It's 4 satchels of sugar. You said a lot.
Yeah, two milks. I think.
milk.
I can't drink strong coffee.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
That's 1, 2.
Even three.
Even 3, yeah. There's not a lot of that.
Yeah. You're very good at ringing. Yeah.
There we go.
Perfect. We start in 2 minutes. Yeah, 2 minutes. When you have a smaller group, when you have a smaller group, it's easy to make it interactive. You know. They can ask questions all the time.
Yes.
Here will be too difficult because people in the back I won't hear them very well. But if they want to afterwards, they can. Thanks, Jim. It's very good. Of course, there are 2 other big divisions of culture, the tea drinking culture and the coffee drinking culture. And I'm definitely from the tea division.
I drink both beverages
But I drink both.
at different times of the day. I like tea in the evening.
I have it first thing in the morning, and then also at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
High tea, perhaps?
What?
Is it high tea as well?
Thai tea?
No, high tea.
No, the Americans drink iced tea. In England, they don't know what iced tea is. I'll just go quickly to the toilet, then I start.
Der kan man betale med alt muligt. Har du købt et eksemplar til skolen? Eller til kontor? Nej, det er det. Er det til skolen? Til dit kontor? Det tænker jeg altså måske. Så tænker jeg, at det er yderst relevant over i din halvdel med kontoret.
Okay. Okay, questions afterwards. Nobody came with only one question during the break. That's all right. We say communication is maybe the most important part of culture, at least learning about culture. You learn it through the way people communicate with you. Otherwise, you don't know what's in their head, and what's in their head is their culture. But you don't know what it is until they speak. So there are different ways of talking to people, and I'll show you 1 or 2 extreme forms and then more general forms. And a lot of it is about how much you speak and how much you don't speak. If you don't speak at all, you don't give much away. I had a Japanese student not so long ago who learning English didn't talk very much, and I said to him, "Why don't you talk more? If you talk more, you'll you know, you'll learn faster. He said, well, if I talk, I make mistakes. He said, if I talk a lot, I make more mistakes. If I talk very little, I make few mistakes. And if I don't talk at all, I make no mistakes, you see. So that's not the best attitude to learning a language. So here we go. Let's take the two cultures in Europe who speak least and most. And the ones who speak most are the Italians. So imagine a meeting between the Italian and the Finn, both males. The Italian male starts off discussing the business, and he says, okay, we're doing a joint venture, this is the deal. And with a verbal approach of 5,000 words, he speaks for 25 minutes, and the Finn listens, but with difficulty, because Finns can't listen to 5,000 words very easily. It upsets them. And in the middle of that, after 5,000 words, he says to the Italian, Giovanni, I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what you mean. Can you explain? It's a mistake to say that. So the Italian says, explain, spieghiamo, voglio spiegare tutto quello. So then he starts talking quickly, and he explains in 10,000 words what he meant by the first 5,000. And the Finn then is under the table, you know, looking for a bottle or something. It's not the way to communicate with Finns, 15,000 words, you know. It's just not the way to do it. Now imagine that the Finn had conducted a meeting. He would have conducted it in this manner. He would have described the same project, you know, who was the capital, who was the land, who was doing the marketing. He would have described the same project in 300 words, which takes only 4 or 5 minutes. And then he stops, you know, that's it. And the Italian, who doesn't really listen for the first 3 minutes, when the Finn stops talking, he says, well, Pekka, I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean, could you explain? Huh? So the Finn then does not use 10,000 words to explain what he meant. Of his male, he uses 10,000 words in a lifetime. So he says to the Italian, he summarizes and he says, what I really meant was, you know, A, B, and C. And the Italian is waiting for the rest of the alphabet, you know, but the Finn sits down because he's finished talking. Now these are examples of people communicating very badly, and this happens nearly every day in Finland. When you have Italians or French people coming, they don't understand that you have to communicate in a different way. And this happens every day in Brussels. The EU, the different delegates stand up and speak in different ways, and some of them speak a lot, French, Spanish, Italian in particular, and people who don't speak very much, you know, the Finns, and well, Swedes are, Danes are in the middle, Danes are okay. So Finns and of course Japanese don't speak very much either. So silence is golden, but it's not always the best policy. So then you have, of course, some countries who negotiate in a more orthodox manner. So the German, you know, is straightforward. Introduction, requires a context, makes a proposal, and if you resist, you know, what's wrong with our proposal, absorbs the counter-argument, modifies the proposal, and makes another one. So German goes forward in a straight line, proposal, rejected, accepted, straightforward negotiating. And Germans are one of the few nationalities that negotiate in a straightforward manner. So some people say that Germans are very heavy and difficult to negotiate with. It's not true. They are fairly easy to negotiate with because you know where they are. A German tells you what he thinks. So Germans are easy negotiators, not difficult ones. Difficult ones are the ones who don't tell you what they think, like the British. So here we are, the UK, and English rather than Scottish, because Scottish are more direct. But here we are, we give a friendly introduction, and we begin casually. It seems we might have a little proposal, okay, very casual. Makes a reasonable proposal, because the British are very reasonable, as you know, look at me. And if you resist that proposal, then we have certain rules. First of all, we keep calm. We kind of half agree. So the Frenchman says, I don't believe anything you say. We say, well, I understand that, Pierre, you know, I understand what you mean. we kind of half agree with them. Very often you say, when a Frenchman, the person is talking a lot, sometimes the best way to stop a Frenchman talking is to agree with him. So we very often do that in negotiating. We kind of half agree with the other side, and suddenly they stop talking, because we've kind of agreed with them, but not quite. And then we use coded speech, which means I say it's interesting when it isn't. I give you more examples. And we use humour. Because if you tell French people jokes, they don't understand them and they get very confused. So, I think the Danes possibly do this also, introducing kind of humorous remarks which seem quite harmless, but are not. And then, of course, we always have the possibility in English to take a tea break. And in the tea break, we talk amongst ourselves and we repackage the deal so the French don't understand it, you see, or we try to. So British people are not straightforward. The Germans are straightforward, the Americans are straightforward, the Australians are straightforward, but British people when negotiating have all these tricks, like cups of tea and humour and funny jokes which you don't understand, jokes about rabbits, brown rabbits and white rabbits, and you say, you understand Pierre? And Pierre says, well, yes, I understand, but what about the proposal? And we say, well, we told you in the joke, we gave our answer in the joke. So this is British negotiating pattern. And these are some of the examples of coded speech that we use. So when we say, interesting idea, we mean, what a stupid suggestion. That's what we mean by it. And when we say, you could say that, we mean, I wouldn't. We must have a meeting about your idea. What do you do with a German? Oh, it's German. The German says, but we're in a meeting. Now, aren't we? We're in a meeting. And he said, yes, but we must have a meeting about your idea, Hans. It's a very good idea, you see. So then Hans says, does that mean we can do it? And the Englishman will say to him, Hans, we shall certainly consider it. Which in English always means we won't do it, you see. But Hans doesn't know that. He thinks I'm considering it. And if we don't agree with someone, we say, I'm not quite with you on that one. So what does the German think? He thinks I'm not quite with you, but I'm nearly with you. We know we're getting somewhere.
You can be persuaded.
Yes, I can be persuaded, yes, but I can't be persuaded, but he doesn't know that. So this is what we call coded speech, and all English people understand what it means immediately. So if you say to an Englishman, I'm not quite with you on that one, he knows you said it's unacceptable. But a German thinks, you're not quite with me, but I'm going to persuade you. An Italian especially will say, I explain what I mean, then he understands, yeah? So that's how we deal with people. And I have an idea that Danes do more or less the same thing. So I agree up to a point, means I disagree, and here you have some more complicated ones, like we must wait for the politically correct time to introduce this. That means forget it. It's not politically correct at the moment. And it has future potential, that means it's failed. And he works intuitively, he's completely disorganized. He's our best golfer, we have to keep him out of the office. And when a boss in England says, let me make a suggestion, he's not suggesting anything, he's telling you what I decided to do. But it's a nice way. A German director or an American director tells you this is what we're doing. Yeah, but Englishman says, let me make a suggestion. Yeah. So it's a very difficult style to follow. That when you're dealing with English people, you must bear that in mind, that they do like to speak in this way, and they speak most of the time in this way, if they don't know you very well. You have now in Denmark, how do they communicate? First of all the meeting is hygge. Examination of the facts, first of all. Okay, and then the Danes make a proposal. And then when you resist the Danes, instead of saying, oh dear me, they're like the British, apparent agreement. Yes, well, I can't follow that up as you say. Yes, I will do that to us. But of course, the Dane is very good at modifying what has been said, and modifying the agreement, and repackaging it. And that's a British skill, and it's also a Danish skill. So this is the almost closest thing in the business world to the British way of using coded speech, is the Danish way of negotiating. And you may or may not, do what you say. You conclude by leaving the door open, but we're not quite sure, you know, what has been agreed. Whereas with a Finn or a Norwegian, you always know what's been agreed. It's either been yes or no. With a Dane, you don't know. Well, hopefully it's yes, of course. Danes are good business people. That's their communication style. This is not going on, no, it is. There. Then Swedes. Okay, well the Swedes, you know, they like to be very correct, semi-formal, proper, plenty of context, they want to know why they're doing something. But then when they're resisted, they go away and they have a little meeting of their own. You know, we have to have a little meeting. And they go and have a little Swedish meeting, and you have to wait till they come back. And you can wait a long time. It's better to have a book to read while you're waiting for them. A good book. And then they come back with a summary, and you know, they don't like to keep looking. They give you their consensus. And that's the way it is, and Sweden is best, so you better agree. So although they're very gentle people in negotiating, they tend to think that only the Swedish way is best. And please, you know, we've decided, we've had a meeting, please agree with us. Yeah. Different from Denmark. Now, let me come to listening. Now, people think, well, either you listen or you don't listen, you know? But that's not true. You don't listen, that's true. But there are different ways of listening. So some people listen very cautiously, and some people listen with open minds and are very interested to hear what you want to say. And some people kind of half listen, you know, and get it all wrong. So let me give you some examples. Let's start with the Americans. Now, if you have an American audience and you want to keep them, if I want to keep this audience, what do I do? Well, you've heard what I do. But if I'm in America, what is the first thing I have to do? The Americans, yes? I have to entertain them. Because Americans are show business people. And show business is entertainment. So this is an American business meeting. They can be all engineers. But the first thing they want is, tell me a joke, please, before we start. Because life may be serious business, but you know, we want to be entertained. We're Americans, show business. You know, Danny Kaye, Bing Crosby, everybody else, whoever they were. Now, I saw this in action. And after that, once you entertain them, then it is very much a business style, listening style. What's new, time is money, get to the point, give us the facts and figures, keep it simple. If you're going to sell it hard. That's how Americans sell. And what's the bottom line? Yeah? Very business. But you have to do the entertainment first, otherwise they're not listening. Because you don't get an American attention unless you listen. So I'll tell you a story. I went to America about 1999 with a group of engineers, and they were from Germany. They're not only German and engineers, but they were middle-aged Germans, and they were from Bavaria. Now, if you want to find the people, a bunch of people who are not very sensitive to culture, you take with you 19 middle-aged Bavarian Germans who were engineers. Yeah. And they didn't speak much except, but they didn't speak German, they spoke Bavarian. And we went with the chief engineer and 18 other engineers, and we went to America, and this was a German company, which perhaps you know, it's the Dornier company. And during the war they made aeroplanes, and after the war they made missiles, and they still make missiles, and they sell them to the Americans. And this was an annual conference in Atlantic City for these German, middle-aged, Bavarian, lederhosen engineers. So I went with them as a facilitator, and we were sat in a room a bit like this, not quite so big, there were only 20 people. And the young American who was the facilitator for the conference, he knew exactly what to do. He had to tell a joke to start with, you see. So he looked at these Germans and he said, I'm very sorry to have had to arrange this conference in Atlantic City. Because you know, as you know, Atlantic City is a very boring place. In fact, he said, it's so boring that when the tide went out last Tuesday night, he didn't come back on Wednesday morning. You see, he's laughing, aren't you? Well, these engineers didn't laugh. I knew what was going to happen. 18 Bavarian faces turned, I was sitting in the corner, they turned to me like this, with a questioning expression, you know, and there was nothing I could do, I just kept quiet. But I knew what would happen at the coffee break. So, At the coffee break, the chief engineer came over to me and he said, Herr Davis, what did he mean when he said that the tide didn't come back? In Germany, the tide always comes back. I said, well, it does in America also. In fact, the tide does come back. It always comes back in America too. He said, then why did he say that the tide didn't come back? Well, how do you answer that? I said, it was American humor. American humor. So he went back to his group of 18 engineers and he said, it was American humor. And then they were all happy, you know, they understood it was humor. But their engineering minds couldn't envisage a time which went out and didn't come back, you see. So that is what you call listening habits. So then you look at the German listening habits, which is deaf. So when you're dealing with Americans, always tell a joke first, and then they will listen for 20 minutes. Their attention span is very short. But they will listen for 20 minutes because they think that in 20 minutes you might tell another joke. And if you don't, they stop listening after 20 minutes. So if you ever go to address the Americans, I warn you, that's what they're like. Okay, so now you see, the German listening pattern is very different. Past history, please, and context. You can say, we are going to open a factory in Chile to make matches. A factory in Chile. Why do we go to Chile? Well, because of these reasons. Well, why matches? Why not make valves or something? Has it been done before? If it was done before, was it successful or not? You know, why go to Chile to make matches when we can make them in Germany or in Sweden? So Germans require context. You have to explain why we're going. You say to the Americans, we're going to make factory for matches in Chile. They say, okay, let's go when we start tomorrow morning, right? So this is the German pattern, listening pattern. And they then want to know, you know, no jokes ourselves, please, we're Germans, so no jokes. And what does it cost? And it sounds rather too simple. And what happens if? So this is what we call a cautious listening pattern. And then you have other listening patterns. So you have Russia. They simply don't believe anything. So Russians, suspicions of official information. If it's official, it's not true. If it's a rumor, it might be true. Interested in, but suspicious of foreigners. So I very often go to Russia, they are interested in me, but they're suspicious just of me like the others. They prefer emotion to facts. Russians are not very interested in facts. They want an emotional bond between the speaker and, you know, you speak to them, you must believe this, I reach and tell you this, personal. Then they listen to you. But the Russians don't like official information because it's always been wrong in the past and it'll be wrong in the future. And apathy, that means they do whatever you discuss, they do nothing. So they don't believe in official information and they do nothing. That's the Russian listening pattern. And it's not changed very much. In France, a difficult audience. Why? First of all, we know what you're trying to tell us. We know already. And secondly, French is best. So what are you trying to sell us, you know? A Cadillac or we have Peugeot, you know. French is best, so why talk about anything else? And we know what you're going to say. So what do you do with the French audience? They're very difficult. But you have them, and you have to talk to them a couple of hours. What do you do? So the only way to deal with a French audience is you have to tell them something they don't know. And if you tell them something they don't know right at the beginning, then they listen. Because French people are very interested in learning something. Very interested. But you have to tell them something they don't know. Otherwise they say, we know everything. It's like the man, you know, encyclopedia salesman trying to sell him an encyclopedia at the front door. And he said, I don't need an encyclopedia, my wife knows everything. See? So, you know what an encyclopedia is. Okay. Denmark, listening pattern. Tolerant, careful listeners, very nice. Need facts, very nice. Needs humor, very nice. Wants a low-key, laid-back approach, very nice. Hidden cynicism, not very nice. Accommodating, very nice. Reactionary figure, very nice. Very, very nice. And creates ideas while listening, nothing wrong with that. Tolerant, careful listeners. So, there we are. Do you agree that you are cynical? Hands up if you agree. They all agree. So in other words, you're not cynical because you all agree that you're cynical. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, you know, you have to be cynical in life sometimes. I'm not blaming you. But you know, everybody agreed. Good. Sweden, well, needs a lot of context, wants facts and technical details, needs time to absorb, nervous about other listeners' opinions, because they think, you know, maybe everybody doesn't agree, and we must have a consensus. So Swedes are nervous about the other Swedes in the meeting, because they don't know if they agree or not. And of course, the cooperative listeners. Jo, December, jo, det är sant, jo, det, you know. Always doing that while you're talking. Nice listeners, but very nervous. Well, there are two presentation styles basically. One is a very reserved one, and one is a very extrovert one. And if you are presenting your company or your ideas in any country, you must bear in mind that you use one style or the other. And if you use the wrong style in the wrong country, people will, they won't like you. They won't even listen to you very much. So in Scandinavia, Denmark would probably be on the left here, certainly in most of the Nordics. The style must be quiet, unhurried, polite, factual, understated, and so on. Whereas if you're lecturing in a Spanish country or a Hispanic country, or even, you know, in the United States, you have to be different. You have to be brisk and clear, loud and clear, direct, imaginative, overstated. Americans overstate things, Nordics understate things. British people understate things. If you understate in England, people believe you. In America, they don't. If you're modest about something, you think you have something to be modest about. So Americans, you have to overstate, and then they think that's true. And all the way down, you see charismatic, hard sell against soft sell. And we've had many examples in our company of a company trying to sell a product and using the wrong technique. We had a Finnish company which about 20 years ago invented a product called Benicol. Hands up if you've heard of Benicol. Nobody, right. Well, the marketing wasn't very good in Denmark. But Benicol was a kind of butter which lowered your cholesterol. Didn't raise it, lowered it. And well, it's a rather hard sell, but it does work. And the scientists proved it. And they marketed it very well in, you know, France and Italy and Southern Europe and Finland itself and in Sweden and a little bit in England, but they couldn't sell it in America. They couldn't sell it, and they sent a team over there, and then the Americans said, we're not interested. So then they phoned us and they asked us what the cultural facts were, and I visited the company and I met the negotiating team, the marketing team, which they sent, were 4 people, all men, all engineers. 4 engineers they sent to sell the product. Does that sound right or wrong to you?
It should have been at least 2 women.
At least 2 women, right. And should they have been women engineers?
Probably not.
Right, probably not. Well, I agree with you. The engineers are not the best salespeople. But the Finns said to me, they are the best salespeople because they know the product. Scientifically, they know what it does. They know how the calories, you know, it reduces. They know the product inside out. They're convincing. But the Americans, you can't convince Americans that way. They sold it in Germany on that basis, you know, so many calories per month less and so forth. The Americans, they wanted something exciting. So they changed the team and they sent 3 women and 1 man, and they were all salespeople in Finland, not engineers. And then they sold the product. It was a question of, you know, which style to use. So if any of you are in a position where you're promoting your company or a product, remember where you're going. It makes a big difference. Big difference between a British and an American audience, for example. Leadership. Okay, well, leaders, there are many types of leaders. Some leaders are born, some leaders are made, some leaders are trained, some leaders are born in a culture and they're transferred to another culture. Now, it's very difficult to transfer one leader from one culture to another culture. So a British leader in a manager sent to America is regarded as shy and ineffective. An American leader, American manager being sent to run an English company is regarded as pushy and boastful, and we don't like him. And, you know, imagine Iranian mullah trying to sell things in Denmark, you know, or Norway. Can you imagine? So, and they are the leaders. So leaders are very different. So how do people lead? Well, there are many styles. And the most democratic leaders and managers are, of course,